Well, welcome everybody. It's the premiere episode of Mock It Like It's Hot, brought to you by Club Fantasy FFL. Class is in session, everybody. Class is in session. Well, so this premiere show of Mock It Like It's Hot is for those novice beginner fantasy football people that just want to start doing fantasy football. Fantasy football is one of the biggest things in the world right now, especially with gambling and all the other ways to make money. But I know myself as a fantasy football aficionado per se, or a player that's been playing for a very long time, I love to do mock drafts on a daily, almost monthly, weekly basis until the league has started up. But my co-host and I, Ryan Weisse and Fantasy Mike, we are here to help you out draft the best team possible to get that championship ring, belt, and to avoid that sacco spot in your league. So, fellas, good morning to you. It's a great week. Tom Brady is back in Tampa for another year. Yes, sir. That's why I'm wearing the shirt.
There you go.
That's why I got my poster in back. Hopefully Gronk will sign soon. I know, Mike, he was your boy for a very
I was going to say, and that's why we see Mike's Patriot hat shaking back and forth.
Here's the worst part. And I told myself not to do this. I had him in Dynasty. I dropped him for Gardner Minshew.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I should probably just lose I'm just going to leave the show. I don't deserve to be.
Don't leave the show.
And the worst part is my brother picked him up for free. So now I just got to listen to that. So that
you know what, Mike, don't feel so bad. You could be the guy that paid almost, I think, over half $500,000 for the last touchdown ball. And
yes,
the next day Brady comes back and that guy's probably out of money.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So anyways, before we kick off the show, make sure to go to the Club Fantasy FFL YouTube page, smash subscribe, follow all the social media pages as well. That way you get enough on the current events and what we're doing, especially on the shows that are coming up weekly on a daily basis. So, Ryan, you want to kick off the draft?
Let's get started. The button as we speak.
Let's do it.
We go. And so let me get the screen up here so that they can see. Nope, not that one. Nope, not that one. There we go. I hate that it covers the first two picks. I'm going to have to see if there's something I can fix with that.
So good. We got our boy here for the first pick.
Doesn't look like he's in. He would have got a notification, but we may have some auto drafters. It's the first episode. It's 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern.
So Ryan, Mike, let me ask you guys kind of like an intro question for those people just kind of starting out in fantasy football, don't really know how to draft, don't really know how to set up draft strategies. If you were kind of like a novice beginner type person going into fantasy, what would be kind of a good way to go into a draft heading in there and say, okay, I need to strategize doing this? What would be my first guy going in the first round?
Well, I'd say don't draft just based on position. You know what I mean? A lot of people think, I got to get my quarterback, then my running back, then my wide receiver, my tight end. Just because it's listed a certain way doesn't mean you need to draft in that order. And you just need to learn the different positional values, which you can kind of talk about throughout the draft. I am a late round QB drafter. I am not the only one. That has kind of become standard throughout the industry now. But it's very easy to fall in love with names like Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, things like that. But these aren't guys you want to be drafting in the first round. If you're a real NFL team, yes. But in fantasy, it's different. And I think we're going to talk about that throughout the show.
So I've got a question for both of you. Jay Busy did draft Christian McCaffrey first overall. I myself am not going to be, if I was the number one draft pick, I'm not going to do McCaffrey first pick. I'm looking at him as now coming back from another injury again. I'm looking at him as maybe a late round guy or maybe a second round guy when it comes to Christian McCaffrey. Do you guys maybe agree? Is his value really kind of taking a knock because he's coming back from another injury?
I don't think I would go as far as dropping him in the second round. But I would say I don't know that he's the 101. We're probably looking at him as the 102 at this point. I'm definitely a Jonathan Taylor 101 guy, have been for a while. So,
okay.
To me, he's actually still my clear-cut 101 at this point. And the reason why is because when he was at his best, he was just, I mean, there's almost nothing like it in the history of fantasy. I mean, you go back to the days of like LaDainian Tomlinson, way back, if, maybe the youngins don't really remember those days, but he is just so special. And he's someone, the targets he gets, what he does in the receiving game is just, it's something you don't really even see from the running back position. So there's absolutely risk with him with these injuries. And, maybe after these injuries, they start working in maybe an RB2 a bit more than they have in the past. But in fantasy, you got to go for the home runs, especially with those early picks. And I just think there are very few that can match the ultimate potential of Christian McCaffrey.
Now we got J-Dubs, Kelly in Phoenix, and Kevin A. Jefferson, Kupp, and Hill, 3 top wide receivers going back to back to back in the first round. Fellas, what do you think about those 3 picks?
I was surprised, so Jefferson going above Kupp after what he did last year is it's not surprising. But I think sometimes too, we fall in love with kind of like the dynasty style, the younger guys. But again, this is a redraft. And I just think that, what Kupp did last year, I don't see any reason why he's not going to do that again next year.
Right.
I would have taken him first, but Jefferson is still a stud too. So
Mike, you got 35 seconds to take your pick though.
Absolutely. I'm looking right now. Let's see here.
I think I can clean this draft board up a little bit. So
I love the 8 pick, Najee Harris at number 8, the volume he's going to get, especially coming into this year.
I was actually considering him at 3 over Cook. It was such a toss up for me. One thing I find interesting is the amount of wide receivers going right now. Evan, you are on the clock.
I know.
The amount of wide receivers going right now. When I was looking at 3, I picked 3 on purpose, and we'll talk about this more later because I had a feeling of who I knew would be the first 2 picks. I didn't think I was going to hate the running backs at 3 that much. I mean, Dalvin Cook, I shouldn't be as scared of him as I am, but I am. And so it's just interesting to me that we're seeing such wide receivers and nothing else at this point. So,
well, it was interesting, Ryan. Running back is typically where I go in the first round, especially in redraft, because it's very hard to get that stud running back. And in PPR, because of the extra point that you get per catch, you can typically find wide receivers to kind of fill out your roster. But the reason why I went with Devontae is the touchdown upside too. So yes, in PPR, you got to look at targets, you got to look at catches. But if you can couple that with just insane touchdown upside, yes, I know it came out this morning or last night, and
I'm not doing the franchise tag.
Yeah, exactly. But I just think that is incredible. And also because I'm at the turn, I knew I could still get somebody like Kamara or Swift, which is what I do at my second pick. So.
Do you think they'll get a deal done with him? Obviously, Aaron Rodgers really took up a lot of money with the Packers. Do you think?
About 20 minutes ago, they announced they're parting ways with Zacharias Smith. So I think
freed up some space.
Yep, they're freeing up that space right now.
Space. Good deal.
Now, actually, Kevin A, who just took Kamara, I want to talk about this for a second. I was actually looking at Kamara over Swift, and I kind of regret almost not taking Kamara because Kamara is just. Fantasy gold pretty much every year. Yes, what happened this offseason, there could still be a chance of suspension or something. But how do you guys feel about Alvin Kamara heading into this year with the quarterback uncertainty and everything as well?
He was a guy I'm kind of, especially going into this year with a new coach. Obviously, it's not a new coach because he's familiar with the offense already. But it's the whole quarterback question about who is going to be leading your team because they don't know yet. Obviously, they're trying to make a push for Jameis Winston, and you can still have Taysom Hill there, but we saw last year that his production was way down from previous years, especially with all the quarterback questions they were having. Obviously, if Jameis would have stayed there throughout the whole year not getting hurt, probably would have been a different story. But since they had such a question mark of who are we going to be starting this week, his value took a hit. That kind of goes in line with what I was going to ask you guys about Deebo Samuel. Now, Mike McDaniels is now the OC and now the head coach of Miami. Do you think, the new OC for San Francisco is going to be maybe changing up the scheme for them, or is Shanahan going to be like, look, we need to keep this guy the way he's going to be, going forward like we did last year with Deebo? I know he was drafted in the second round.
I can't imagine he runs the ball as much. I feel like that was a product of his environment, lots of issues at running back, things along those lines. I think he's still going to be used relatively similar, but I can't imagine he runs the ball nearly as much as he did last year.
Okay. Wow, Kelly with the snipe on Darren Waller. My goodness, what a little tight end run we got going here, boys. I'm actually very proud of our team here.
If I can wait this late to get Travis Kelce, thank you all. I understand it's a mock draft, but that's my dream come true right there.
Two quarterbacks off the board, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen back to back.
That's interesting. This is a very interesting round. So if you guys don't mind, I want to take a second to talk about positional value here.
Sure.
A little bit. So I'm one of those two that believes in drafting tight ends early. And Kelly just threw me all off here. Let me get my pick. My goodness. All right, you guys keep. I got a pick here. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
I just wanted to throw out. Kelly also got me. We've been talking. Kelly's the talk of the town right now. Antonio Gibson, 2 picks before me. My whole hope was Cook and Gibson. Gibson was a little far down. And one of my favorite things to tell new drafters, you brought this up earlier in the show, Evan, is pay attention to site default rankings, because there are guys who are further down than they should be. Antonio Gibson is a prime example on Sleeper right now that are going to fall a little bit later than they probably should have. You could have easily seen Gibson go over a guy like Kamara or Nick Chubb. And I think you could have gotten him. It wouldn't have been a surprise if he went earlier, to where one of my favorite things to do at the beginning of a draft is I go through and find the guys who are rated far too low, and I put them on a little watch list. I don't use my queue for the next player I'm drafting. I use my queue to make sure I find the value late in the draft that other people might forget about. And then I know when they're about to come up and I should snag them around early.
And Mike, you did get Cam Akers, by the way.
I did. I went with Akers because all my tight ends that I really wanted were gone. So, all right, what I wanted to say about the tight end position is this. If you have an elite tight end, it sets you and gives you a positional advantage that many in the league don't have. As I said, with wide receiver, yes, they're the elite of the elite, but typically it starts to kind of get saturated after you get out of the top 10. Everyone there's not a huge difference between, the wide receiver 24 and the wide receiver 29 per se, right? But the difference between the tight end 3 and the tight end 10 is immense. So I'm actually, again, I'm very proud of the league with how many tight ends have been taken so far. So again, you don't want to overdraft a tight end and reach on someone like a Dallas Goedert or something right now, but the elite tight end should not be there past the beginning of the 3rd round. It just should.
I hope Kevin's on auto draft, because taking Saquon.
I was looking at Saquon. I really was. I mean,
no,
I don't understand. I don't understand why people the huge hate for Saquon.
I don't have a hate for him. It's just a hate that the team that he's on. Like, he needs to be away from the Giants and be on another team.
But Dayball's there now, which again may not help him. He's more passing offense, but still, I mean, I'm not giving up on Saquon yet. That guy's he's got a lot of talent. He's also, especially in PPR, somebody who had 94 or 93 targets as a rookie. I mean, he's somebody who's going to catch the ball, and that is what you want out of the running back position in PPR. So,
isn't that what they have Daniel Jones for, to run the ball?
Yes, that's true.
He's like Daniel Jones is like the Wish version of Josh Allen.
I think the most important thing for Saquon is I'd like to see him more involved in the passing game again. Like his rookie year, I think it was over 100 targets, almost 75, maybe even 80 receptions, something along those lines. I thought that was huge for him that rookie year, and that's something that went away, and it's something I would love to see happen for him again, because right now the touchdowns aren't there. That team is not, and they're not going to just instantly improve in the touchdown department with Dable, but it is something that could improve in the next 2 years if Saquon's even there. But if he's not going to score touchdowns, we need to see receptions. I think that's just such a huge thing for him. So
Josh had a great comment in the comments. Aaron Jones in the 4th. Very surprising he dropped that far was Aaron Jones. Good pick. I like that.
I think there's a lot of, I don't want to call it hatred because it's not quite hatred, but there's a lot of in the dynasty community and most drafts going on right now.
AJ Dillon.
Dynasty. Exactly.
AJ Dillon.
Everyone's like, trade Aaron Jones as fast as you can. In Dynasty, it makes a little bit more sense because he just restructured his deal so that there's a big out after this season. But in redraft, Aaron Jones is an excellent pick.
Michael Thomas on the okay. So Michael Thomas is a curious case. Coming back from an injury. Obviously, we talked about the quarterback situation in New Orleans. Is his value still going to be there, even though they don't know who's going to be at QB in New Orleans? Obviously, yes. Michael Thomas is a stud. He's going to produce no matter what. But taking him in the 5th, do you like that?
1,000%. I mean, I think that could end up being a steal. I mean, this is somebody who, set the record. Who wants like the record for most receptions of the season. Cooper comes along and everything too. But he had a couple injuries. Then he also had a setback with the ankle injury too. A little concerning. He's 28 years old. But again, this is the modern NFL. These guys are dead at 30 years old anymore. And like you said, we've seen him produce with Taysom Hill. We've seen him produce with Drew Brees. So he produces no matter who he's with. Love the Jalen Waddle pick right here in this round. That is fantastic, especially great PPR. Pick. Set the rookie reception record. He's going to get targets. McDaniel's already, pumping him up. Love the Waddle pick right there.
Mike, what are your thoughts on Amari Cooper? Now, he was traded to Cleveland this past weekend. What do you think his value is going to be in Cleveland? I know everybody hates on Baker Mayfield, that offense as well. What do you think about his value going in?
What do I think of Amari Cooper? Amari and I have a very tumultuous past. We've gone through a lot together. Like years back, I swore off him and never draft him. Drafted him again last year. He's just so frustrating. He is. There goes DJ Moore. He is
not gonna lie. I immediately wanted DJ Moore after I drafted DK Metcalf, and
if Hopkins wasn't there, I was going more. Looks like I'm up again. Give me one memento here. But no, Amari Cooper is someone who is very, very talented. He's just very frustrating. The inconsistency and the injuries can be a problem, but the man is very, very good. And if he could just stay on the field, he's certainly going to produce.
I think he brings a different attitude to Cleveland than Odell Beckham did. A lot of people are hating on this. I love all the RIP to Amari Cooper tweets. It's so original. But anyway, I apologize if you guys did it, but don't. But anyway, Amari Cooper is a very different player than Odell Beckham. And obviously there's consistency issues. But with Landry gone, Beckham gone, and then Kareem Hunt gone, the targets are going to be there. And if Amari Cooper is a 10 to 12 target guy per game, and that's a little high, but it's not out of the realm of possibility, I think this could be great for him. So
I think it was just time for a change. And there's risk there, but there's also really high upside. So I like that where Amari went. I don't have a problem with that at all.
I think we have to talk about what J Dubs is doing right now. Because again, we really wanted to guide this show towards people who are new to fantasy. And one of the phrases that gets thrown around a lot is 0 RB. And it's someone who's waiting till very late to take their running back. And Joel has started the draft with Jefferson, Debo, Lamb, Waddle. You couldn't ask for a better wide receiver core. And I set this draft up as 3 wide receivers and a flex. He can start every one of those guys every week. And then he threw TJ Hockenson into the tight end spot. Are you guys, there are people who are very pro 0 RB, very anti 0 RB. I'm a guy who lets the draft come to me, so I'm not necessarily against it, but I would need to be in a weird spot to fall into it. Where do you guys fall on that?
I mean, he's got so much. Well, look at it this way. I mean, the amount of trade bait that he has too.
Yeah.
With all the guys that he drafted. But going into later rounds, you look at the first few rounds of drafting a running back is right now, there used to be a preference of running backs to draft the first couple rounds. Now the window is really closed because those guys have either gotten hurt or they've fallen off or they're retired. It's a full PPR league. I mean, if he can get one of those tier 2, tier 3 guys in the later rounds, I mean, hopefully his next pick will be a running back. But you never know. He might go another wide receiver again. But, I mean, there's so many nuggets that you can find later in the rounds that could start for that team. So it's kind of like you pick your poison. This is the draft strategy I would do. Now he picked J.K. Dobbins. Now obviously he's coming back from an injury of last year, depending on how he's going to be. This could be a good pick for him. This is like a boomer bust for him.
Yeah.
Everything has to go right in order for 0 RB to work. It is not a foolproof philosophy. And kind of like Ryan, like you said, you have to play the board. If you get too stuck on one strategy, you could end up really hurting yourself. Like, for instance, and we'll go back and talk about this, I never take a quarterback that high. I just took Kyler Murray. We were just talking about this beforehand. I only went for that because of the stack with Hopkins. But for me with running back, especially what we've seen the past couple of years, the thing you have to worry about with 0 RB is injuries. Perfect example, his RB1, who has RB1 potential, J.K. Dobbins, was also somebody who missed all of last season. Christian McCaffrey was hurt. Dalvin Cook, even as great as he is, he's got a lot of injury issues. Look what happened to Derrick Henry. Look what happened to Austin Eckler the year before. So it's like literally they get hurt. And if you don't draft running backs, people say, oh, you can find one on the wire. Yes and no, not really someone you can rely on. Now, some people will say, well, this is PPR. So in PPR, this actually allows for more running backs to have value because of the targets and everything. But here's a fun little stat I found this morning. Guess who was 10th, 11th, and 12th in running back targets last year? Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis, and Darrell Williams. Outside of Darrell Williams, did you want anything to do with either of those other 2 running backs?
No.
Right?
No.
So this is what I'm saying. So there is truth in the fact that, yes, you can find your J.D. McKissics or even Nyheim Hines, who a lot of people were on last year, was completely useless at the end of the season. He was supposed to be a PPR guy. So it's it's very hard if you wait long on running back and you don't really have anybody else that you can rely on behind your stud. You could really end up screwing yourself. And people say, well, I'll just trade by wide receiver depth. It's not always that easy to do so when in the middle of the season, especially in redraft.
It's funny you mentioned you don't go quarterback early. I normally don't as well, but I had my eye on Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. So kudos to Jay Blizzy and Faith for destroying that for me.
I think so. Let's talk about that for a second. So, why is it bad to draft a quarterback early? Right, like they're the star of the league. Patrick Mahomes is so good. Josh Allen is so good. Why would you not draft them first overall? Well, because here's the difference. All right, you got to look at value. You got to look at the difference in points between the really elite guys at a position and the guys who are, after that. I'm not even saying the bottom of the position. I'm saying like kind of the middle tiers. So when you look at the difference in point values between the top 12 last year, the difference between the number one, the QB1 and the QB12 in points per game was 4.9. That is not to say that Mahomes and Allen aren't worth taking over guys like, Tannehill, who's the QB 12. But when you look at, running back, for instance, the difference between the QB1 and the RB1 and the RB12 was 8.8. So that's almost double. So what you want to do is that shows you that you really do want to have a running back that you can rely on, because it's very hard to find elite guys later on. Whereas you can find a streamer if your quarterback's out for a week. Rarely you're going to find someone that can produce the same as an RB1 on the waiver wire, which is why you wait on a quarterback, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
All right, it's up to me now. I am up.
Yeah, it's an interesting strategy and then it really plays into guys who combining late quarterback with 0 RB. It works. And so I'm going to come back to Joel's team, because I understand there's been a run on quarterbacks, but I don't know that I would take a quarterback this early, and 7th is hardly early, but I don't think I would take a quarterback this early and combined with the 0 RB strategy. So I'm going to be real interested to see what his team looks like at the end of the whole draft, because he's building a lot differently than anybody else in the draft.
And sometimes you got to do that to make yourself different too, but don't, like I said, don't get too cute with it just to be that guy, and I always say this, especially in Dynasty, in this community, it seems like a lot more people are focused on being the smartest person in the room instead of drafting a good team, or saying that one pick that I drafted early. Okay, well, the rest of your team sucks. So it's like, great, you hit there, but are you really winning? So don't get too stuck on strategy is basically what I'm saying.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't work back to the 6th round a little bit and talk about, is it Dumaze? I don't know, but grabbing Breece Hall, the first rookie off the board. He was someone I was actually looking at in my later 6th round pick. I had it queued up and ready to go. Is this about the right time? Obviously, we're doing this draft extremely early. We don't know where he's going to end up, but he's looking like a solid RB1 in fantasy, especially if he ends up in a great situation.
I'm always worried about taking rookies this high. I mean, I was burned last year with Kyle Pitts taking him in. I think I took him in the fourth or fifth round of last year, one of my drafts. It's just that unknown, because obviously, coming from college into the pros, it's the most tape you have is that college stuff. And just taking a rookie this early, it's one of those boomer bust, risks that you have to take if you're going to take a rookie off the board this early. So, yeah. Would I do it again? Hell no. I wouldn't take a rookie this high. Hell no.
I'm a big fan of Breece. I don't mind that at all. Like I said, I probably would have taken maybe it's about good value, right about where I take him. And how do you guys feel about Etienne? He's who I selected right before Breece Hall, and he's not a rookie, but he's someone who hasn't played in the NFL yet. But he was someone I was thinking, especially in PPR, somebody who was just, elite, like truly one of the best pass catching running backs that we have seen come out of college in years. And I think in that Jaguars offense right now, I do believe they're going to go hard after some receiver this offseason. You have to for Trevor Lawrence, but playing with his buddy Trevor Lawrence, playing in a Peterson offense, which some people say is kind of scary because the whole running back by committee thing. But I think that Travis Etienne is the one guy not enough people are talking about that has real top 10 potential at the position this year. How do you guys think about it?
I like that, what you just said, because to me, Etienne is almost like a Miles Sanders 2.0.
Yeah.
Because just the way you can put him as the pass catching back too, and now since Peterson is the head coach of that team, you're going to see a little bit of that Philly-esque offense that they used to run when he was that coach. And Etienne just reminds me of how Miles Sanders was when Peterson was there.
I assume you meant that by Miles Sanders that he wasn't going to score any touchdowns.
Well,
Yeah. It hopefully doesn't follow the same injury road as Miles Sanders. But
right. No, I think it's a completely different offense. And so I kind of joked, I made this joke on our show with DJ Chark, and it applies to Travis Etienne as well, is they might have been in the best position of all because they didn't really live through the Urban Meyer BS last year. So it's still a fresh start for them with this new offense with a far more professional coach in Doug Peterson. So I think it could be a little bit better than what we're expecting from a team that was just putrid last year. But I mean, James Robinson pre-injury, we had some solid games. So
Ron, I like that Hunter Renfrow prick. I love it.
Oh, that is a great pick. I was just going to say that, especially PPR, someone who's going to get peppered with targets. And yes, they could also still go out and get a wide receiver. But I also think, and I posted the other day, again, Kelly still Darren Waller for me. I only want Kelsey and maybe Mark Andrews over Waller this year. So I think if you have Waller or Renfrow, you're going to put up a lot of points.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment. Renfrow is a guy, again, this goes to the site rankings thing. This guy was a top 15 wide receiver last year, I think approaching top 10 if he wasn't top 10, and especially in full PPR. And he was so far down on the list where he's a guy that I was waiting. I had him in my queue very early. I just didn't know if any of you guys were going to take a look at him. And at this point, I was coming around on the turn. I might as well grab him. I'm a little weaker at wide receiver than I'd like to be. And so that kind of just played right into my hand to go get a potential top 15 wide receiver and an offense with Josh McDaniels that could make him a PPR god. It's something I'm looking for late in drafts this year.
I reaped the benefits with Hunter Renfrow last year, and it was somebody I was looking to target possibly in the 11th, but he was snagged. So
I'm just glad you can go back and scour my Twitter, and I have the receipts. I'm the biggest Hunter Renfrow fan you'll ever find ever. So I am so happy with the way things have gone for him. You took
Gronk. Is that because I took Brady? Is that why?
1,000% because Brady's coming back. Why not? And again, this is redraft. This ain't dynasty, baby.
I know.
I was thinking about that this morning. All the Gronk to Buffalo and Cincinnati rumors were killed yesterday as well.
They sure were. I love your Michael Carter pick there in the last round too, Ryan. And even though I was giving Kelly some credit on Waller, I am just actually shocked that Gus Edwards went before Michael Carter. I would if he comes back and in that Ravens offense, he was great, before he got hurt, which was it. But and this isn't to throw shade at Kelly, it's more of the I think Michael Carter in the 9th round could be an absolute steal as long as they don't go out and get somebody else. So
yeah, I think Carter was a guy they obviously liked last year. He was a guy that everyone was high on last year. I find you're going to hear us use the term quite a bit on the show, or at least me use the term post-hype sleeper. Carter didn't necessarily have the hype last year, but second-year running backs are guys who tend to have a big thing, and you have to expect the Jets' offense to improve. So I think Carter's going to be a guy who's going to have a lot of upside this year, probably score a few more touchdowns, and we saw him super involved in the passing game. While it was with Mike White, you hope that they saw that worked, and maybe we can see Zach Wilson throw some complete passes to Michael Carter this year.
I want to go back to Dumas.
I went with Dumas because I was trying not to go Dumas. So.
He drafted Russell Wilson. So Russell Wilson just recently got traded over to the Denver Broncos. How much of his value has just spiked from going from Seattle to Denver?
In the public eye, it's fantastic. And I was talking with some of our writers over at Football Guys. Russell Wilson comps very well to Aaron Rodgers. And you have to remember that Denver offense is going to be a Green Bay installed offense. And obviously Russ isn't Aaron Rodgers, and certainly none of these wide receivers are Devontae Adams, but the comps are there for Russell Wilson to instantly jump back into the top 5 conversation.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see. He's somebody who, always had a lot of production with his legs too, which has kind of slowed down a bit the past couple of years. And I kind of like seeing that. Russell Wilson is actually my favorite player. He's so fun to watch. He's someone who's so easy and so fun to root for, but he plays hard. And I think that as especially what we've seen too, in the NFL, guys are bigger, faster, stronger every year. Especially these linebackers, they may want to kind of try to protect him a bit, especially with the injuries that he's had the past couple of years, not major ones, but just little ones. And he's not a big guy. So if the rushing production goes down a little bit and continues to trend downward, I think he loses a little value, but he's still an absolute stud. The only thing I want to point out is I'm unsure if Dumas looked at the league settings, and this is a very, very, very important thing to do before you do any draft. Look at your league settings and look at your scoring. There's no reason to have 2 quarterbacks right now. It's not a super flex league. It's only a 1 QB league, and he has Josh Allen and Russell Wilson. So some people do that because they go, oh, well, I'm just going to have one on my bench and I'll trade it to somebody during the season. But in a 1 QB league, it is impossible to trade a quarterback.
In a 10-team,
And when there's so many guys available there to pick up.
And again, this is strategy show. I'm not trying to attack my guy. You know, Dumay's we're in a league together and everything. And but it's just that's a tough one because that is a bench spot that you could have used where you got guys like Kareem Hunt. You know, even like I said, Michael Carter went a few picks before that. Who went after? I mean, geez, Elijah Moore was there. Good pick, Evan. My goodness. In the 10th round, that is an absolute steal. Elijah Moore was the wide receiver 1 for a stretch of a couple weeks this season in PPR. So Mike Williams even with the upside there. So Russell Wilson's great, but I do not like that pick at all.
And I kind of want to hit on that. That's one of the points of this show, guys. So I want to be very clear. There's going to be a segment coming up later that we'll talk about when we get there, but we're going to criticize your teams. The whole point of this is not for us to make you better at fantasy football. You came in here with a strategy. It worked. It didn't work. It's a mock draft. The point is to make everybody listening to this show understand how people who do this think. And maybe they're going to like our strategy, but maybe they're going to look at your team and like your strategy a lot better. There's going to be no offense meant whatsoever. There are going to be teams we love. There are going to be teams we hate. But that's the point of this, is to help people grow in fantasy. A lot of times you see shows where they're so focused on the high level points per game, routes run, and things like that. But we forget that 90% of our community, probably more, they're just doing this for fun with their office, and maybe a small mock draft show that they come across at some point down the road is going to play out very well for them and help them understand things just a little bit better. So
remember, it's just constructive criticism. We're not here to bash you at all, except for just bashing Ryan's team.
I say we may bash each other. That's just kind of how things work sometimes. So,
let me ask you too, for the values of running backs and wide receivers going into a draft, which you really, if let's say I'm a novice, I've never done this before, I'm looking at just the whole scheme of things of how I'm going to draft in the middle rounds, especially when, you know, the star players are really kind of going off the board. And obviously in a 10-man league, and it's still really good pickings because it's a 10-man league. And my strategies in the later rounds for the positional players, what am I really going to be looking at as value wise?
I want to go back to kind of what Ryan said. I think this plays into it really well. Is having, don't get so caught up in ADP and position. Yes, we're sitting here saying, hey, we do this for a living. We're trying to teach you. And yes, there are those who probably know fantasy football, you know, a little better than you, even a little better than us. Like there's always someone out there who knows more. So yes, you want to trust these rankings, but I also kind of hate myself for what I just did on my team, because Chase Claypool was somebody that I took in the 8th round, and 2 rounds later, Elijah Moore went. And I just don't like that. It's because we only had a minute to do each pick. But I felt kind of rushed and I wasn't really sure, but I totally would have taken Elijah Moore over Claypool, even though he was way down in the rankings. So just do your research. Also, the reason why I like Elijah Moore more than someone like Claypool in a PPR is because of those targets. You want to look for guys and the late ends who just get targets. Volume is king in fantasy, always, 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 always. Even guys who really aren't that efficient, oftentimes if they get the volume, they're still going to score more points just because they get the ball. You can't score points if you don't get the ball, you know? So if you're more in like a standard league that only focuses on yards and touchdowns, if you have some leagues that have like point modifiers, like, you know, extra 2 points for every 40-yard catch or things like that, someone like a Claypool might have made more sense, but I am regretting that. I much rather would have had someone like an Elijah Moore instead of a Chase Claypool where I took him. So,
Mike, it's okay. Your regret is what I feed off of. And
yes, Elijah
Moore, that's okay. Great pick by Kevin A in the 11th by getting Michael Gallup.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a guy
great pick.
High in the news right now and fell very late in the draft. So.
Also, somebody picked Dalton Schultz.
That's Massey 86.
Massey, yeah. So. Dalton Schultz, a good pick at tight end. 2 guys, I mean, especially with Michael Gallup, with Amari Cooper going over to Cleveland, like his value is just going to skyrocket in that offense now. I mean, I always thought Michael Gallup was pretty kind of like superior to Amari Cooper when they got him. So I love that pick at 11. And it looks like I'm up. Okay.
You are up. And while you're up, I'm going to go right back to Mike's most recent pick. You're drafting Melvin Gordon. Are you drafting Melvin Gordon in Denver, or are you drafting Melvin Gordon in another team?
Well, this gives me an opportunity to talk about your pick of Sir Javonte a little earlier, too. So yes. Javonte is like the most polarizing player in fantasy right now. Now he's somebody I have a lot of shares of, or a couple shares of in Dynasty, someone I love from the talent perspective. But I think what you got to be careful with here is in today's NFL, it's very rare for someone to be a true RB1 and get all the touches, right? I think Gordon goes back to Denver. I don't see why he wouldn't. I think the Russell Wilson move pretty much solidifies that he's going back to Denver. Why would he want to leave? And why would Denver want to fix what ain't broken, right? I mean, Javonte and Gordon last year were fantastic, and Melvin Gordon was a very, very good fantasy player to have. So I think if Javonte were by himself, like I said, he carries with him the just elite RB1 value, but I think somebody like Melvin Gordon is someone who's getting very, very overlooked. Yes, it changes if he leaves Denver, but I think he goes back there and ends up being a top 30 running back, if not higher, pretty easy.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment. And you kind of hit it on the head with why would he change? More importantly, I'm a guy, you're going to find this out throughout the show. I've said it a ton on this past Wednesday. I focus a lot on the systems that are going to be in place. Green Bay runs a 2-back system. Melvin Gordon could be the A.J. Dillon to Javonte Williams, Aaron Jones. They could both be very successful in this offense. So,
and just to clarify, the reason for those who may know, so Green Bay's offensive coordinator last year is now the head coach at Denver, Nathaniel Hackett. So, but you're absolutely right, Ryan. It was Jones and Dillon, and actually it was just the flip from the beginning of the season where it was all Jones in the first half. It was actually Dillon that was carrying the load mostly at the end of the year. So. They're both fantastic. They're both great to have on your team, but I would say don't fall for the Javonte Williams top 5 hype this year, especially if Melvin Gordon comes back. That's all I'm saying.
I'm glad that you guys brought up the coaching changes too. I think that's one of the things as a player, as you get more into fantasy football, is you have to really look at the coaching changes, the offseason moves, especially when it comes to the personnel, because one system may work for players when it happens, but when they change into a different system, it may not work for that player going into the next season. So always look at the off-season coaching moves from coaching to coaching, new offensive coordinators, new head coaches, because that's really going to impact your players going forward because schemes may not work for certain types. So always look at those.
Yep, and that's it. And like I said, you're going to hear me talk about that on the show all the time. Actually, we have a little bit of breaking news. It's all rumors at this point, but I'll throw Josh's message up here. It looks like Ben Albright posted that Melvin Gordon may be on the move.
Well, damn, take back everything I said. No, I still think actually, so here's the thing too, and this is why mocks like this are interesting at this point. It's a little pre-free agency, pre NFL draft. This board is probably going to look just immensely different if we did this in August, of course.
And it's going to look, this exact board's going to look hilarious in August.
Exactly. So. No, exactly. I mean, but here's the thing too, is someone like Melvin Gordon could go somewhere else and end up being a top 15 back that he's been multiple times in his career if he doesn't stay in Denver. And then if he does leave, then Javonte Williams to the moon. So it's just, you have to pay attention to these moves, and you can't. It's also very important to go, well, this guy scored this many points last year, so that's probably what he's going to do again this year. That is the worst thing that you can do. If you look in a vacuum at what they did last year, there are just so many factors. Injuries, not only to themselves, but to other guys. Who was their coach last year? How bad was their defense? Did they need to pass more? Could they not run as much as they wanted to? And it seems like it's so overwhelming, but that's what we're here for. So this is what I'm saying. It's a balance. Trust your gut, do your own research, but then also follow, some of the guys and gals who are really doing the work out there and doing the research and bringing up those numbers that maybe a lot of people aren't thinking about. And if you balance that, that's how you draft. But like I said, don't just get a magazine and look at stats from last year and go off that. You will.
Do that every draft, though, Mike. I do that every year. I take the Sports Illustrated one, and that's what I look at, stats from last year. What are your guys' thoughts on best fit for Gordon? Where if he's on the move, what would be the best fit for him, team-wise?
Miami.
Yeah, you're going to lean on those teams. If you believe, and I kind of felt good about them until 48 hours ago or 24 hours ago. If you believe the Falcons had a chance in the NFC South until Tom Brady announced he's not retired, that would have been a nice fit just because you expect a bruising running back there, and not that Gordon's a full bruiser, but he can certainly play well. So Atlanta could have been fun, especially for fantasy, but Miami seems like the no-brainer pick.
I'm just really interested in seeing how that offense does with the new coach, man. It's going to be fun. Going to be fun. We're going into our later rounds.
Yes.
Let me go through later round advice with you Dak Prescott. Okay.
How the hell did Dak
Prescott fall that far?
But this is the point about not
Yeah.
taking QB early. And again, I went with the stack earlier, but I should have waited. You know who else is there too? Jalen Hurts is still here.
Yeah.
Like he's Trey Lance, who's probably going to be top 5 guy again. And this is, I'm like criticizing my own team here. But okay, here's my pick that I actually love. And I'm glad he's still here. And he's someone who I've been standing for huge this offseason. And I know right now I'm building him up so much, but this gentleman right here, Mr. Kadarius Toney.
Mr. Toney.
He is someone who, again, a polarizing guy coming out of Florida. He was a first-round pick. A lot of people loved him. A lot of people hated him. But when he had some injuries last year. He had some maturity issues, getting kicked out of a game for throwing a punch. But if you go back and watch that Dallas game, he was the best player on the field that day, period. No questions asked. Yeah. He was absolutely electric. And if you look at things like his yards per route run, his hog rate, which I know are advanced stats, but basically it means when he's out there running routes, he's getting targeted. He's getting the ball. And I think in a Daboll offense, yes, Daniel Jones is the quarterback. I get that. But the upside with somebody like Kadarius Toney this year, especially coming from someone who was just coaching Josh Allen and all those receivers, I am stoked that I just got Toney in the 13th round.
It's a great pick. The PPR upside of Kadarius Toney is absolutely insane, and it's such a better offense. You just got to hope Daniel Jones is better than we've seen.
That is true. You are banking on a lot there, but like I said, that's what you have to do, and especially in the later rounds. To me, it's all about swinging for the fences. That's what it is. It's all about the upside. Don't worry about, if you've got your guys that you can rely on in the beginning of the draft, someone that you can plug in every week and go, all right, I can reasonably expect to get 10 to 15 points out of them or whatever. Swing for the fences at the end of the draft, because those are the guys that are going to set you above. Those are the guys that are going to get you those points. Those are the guys that could push you kind of over the top. And I think that's what you should, like I said, try to do in the last few rounds there. So.
We're coming into our final round, 2 rounds. Ryan, you have your thoughts on kickers and defenses. Tell somebody if they were just coming into a league and really kind of a novice at fantasy football, your thoughts about defenses and kickers.
And we just had our first kicker.
First kicker off the board.
Yep, and I'm absolutely fine with that. Yes. There is one app that I'm aware of, and I've done immense research on this. The ESPN drafting process forces you to fill your roster. You have to draft a kicker. You have to draft a defense. Otherwise, skip them. Kicker and defense is a position that changes weekly. It certainly changes yearly. It's so hard to predict who's going to be good from year to year, especially then breaking it down even further to week. It's rough. You can switch these players. There are always players on free agency that you can go pick up, and every week pick a different player. It's called streaming. I actually do an entire video, and I'm going to bring in the article back for next season, a video and article on streaming quarterback, tight end, and defense. Lindellians at Lindellians does the kicker rankings for Matthew Berry's app. There are a ton of resources out there where you can find a better player than wasting any sort of draft pick. Load up on running backs and wide receivers. Hold them until the week before the season starts. That's trade bait. That's injury insurance. Now, if you are going to take them, there is no kicker. There is no defense worth taking before the 14th and 15th round or the last 2 rounds of your draft.
Ever. Not even if there's a fire. Don't do it.
Ever. And it's just, you're going to see, it's almost always defense that goes in the single digit rounds. And it's almost always the defense that dominated last year. It just doesn't tend to repeat. Maybe it's because we didn't have a very dominant defense last season that it didn't happen in this draft, but it does happen, and just avoid it. So if you're new to fantasy, Evan touched on this right at the beginning of the show, or maybe it was Mike, it was probably both of you, because it's great advice. Don't feel forced to fill your roster. Don't feel forced to fill your starting lineup before you start moving on to bench. There's going to be time to add a kicker and a defense later, putting it bluntly. So,
especially when it comes to defenses too, on a weekly basis, you look at the matchups.
Play the matchups.
I know it's like the ad drop, but like when you're looking at the matchups each week, you're going to say, okay, New England's got a great defense. They're going against this weak offense. I'm going to pick up the Patriots defense if they're available. Obviously, the Patriots defense last year was a pretty good defense to have, and most people stayed with them throughout the year. It's just looking at those matchups week to week. If you're one of those guys that takes a flyer each week on the defense, just look at who's available and what the matchups are.
For sure. And you also look at it too in today's NFL. As time goes on, it's becoming more and more of an offensive league. It's very hard to have an elite defense. I'm not saying that there aren't great defenses and ones that are much better than the other. I'm also not saying that you shouldn't ever draft a defense if you still have that in your league. But It's just there's like Brian said, there's no reason to draft them that high. You are not getting any value. In fact, you are hurting yourself. You're not building out your bench as best as you possibly could. I also love the strategy you brought up of not even drafting a kicker or a defense at all if you don't have to at first, and then drafting extra bench guys because that allows you to go through the preseason and go, oh wow, this guy, holy wow, he's going to be the RB2, or oh my god, he's the wide receiver 2 in this offense now, and it's somebody. Then you can cut somebody else who you thought was going to be, even better. You know what I mean? So it gives you the chance to, really, like I said, build out your bench to the best of your ability. Another thing, draft's about to end now, that I'm seeing too is a lot of teams are taking 2 quarterbacks in a 1 quarterback league in a 10. Again, it's so easy to fall in love with the names. Like Deshaun Watson in the 14th round sounds insane. But when you already have another quarterback, why are you doing that? I just, some people can say, oh, well, it's because I want to make sure I have insurance. But honestly, you're probably going to have a tougher time finding a backup running back than you are replacing a quarterback that your quarterback that goes down, if that makes any sense. It's just don't place too much value on the names and the stars of the league. Build depth, build value at important positions. And that's just my little piece there. So.
All right, we have come to the end of our draft. Congratulations, everybody. First draft done and out of the way. So this segment of the show, we're going to go through our takeaways of the draft, who really had a great draft. I'm going to crown the winner of the league. Ryan, you're going to do the last place guy, the loser of the league. So, Mike, let's get your draft takeaways, strategies. Who did you like? Give us some good picks that people were doing throughout the draft.
I gotta say, so I want to start with J-Dubs for a second, where he did the 0 RB strategy, and he actually did it the right way. So I'll give him that. I know, like I said, it's tough to get too caught in a strategy. You don't want to do that, but as Ryan already said, that core of Jefferson, Samuel, Lamb, and Waddle is just silly. He's somebody who I think he was also able to nab someone who I think has a chance to be a top 5-6 player at the tight end position in TJ Hawkinson. So that's huge. And he was still able to get Aaron Rodgers. I mean, so it's just that, to me, just looking off the top, it's crazy because I went running back heavy, and I typically do, and I like the team that didn't. But if everything works out, I mean, Elijah Mitchell is an RB2, Penny, depending on where he goes, and then my boy Ramondre Stevenson, as well, is just, I think he did. I'm a big fan of J-Dubs there at number 4. Sure.
I'd say we don't necessarily have to go team by team, but is there anything else that stands out for you?
Really just kind of looking at the board here. I don't know. There's a couple good teams. Faith coming in nice there with the, Taylor Diggs, wide receiver 1, tight end 1. Josh Jacobs. Now here's somebody who very surprisingly got a lot of targets last year. That was always his biggest criticism, is the fact that he doesn't get targeted in the passing game. And last year he had 64 targets, and he gets Josh McDaniels, who I can tell you from watching him for the past 1,000 years as the Patriots offensive coordinator, he loves the screen game, which is also why I took Kendrick Drake a little later on in the draft too. So I think that you could actually see someone like Jacobs have even more targets this year than he did last year. So that could be a steal in the 4th round. Cooper, Harris was fantastic. I mean, Harris is your RB3, Joe Burrow. So even Connor, someone who I've been, looking at, even acquiring in dynasty leagues. I think if he goes back to Arizona, he's another, top 10, top 15 back this year. So good job, Faith. I like Faith's team a lot too.
There you go. Evan, you want to pick a winner?
Yeah, it's tough, man. I think everybody had pretty good drafts overall, and
I'm very nervous because this is our first episode, everyone, and I have a team who I think I want to call last place, but what if Evan picks them as the winner?
As the first place winner?
Very interesting, because this is not scripted whatsoever. So.
I loved his draft strategy, and it was so out of the box, especially for like a 10-man league. I'm gonna crown J-Dubs, man. I like J-Dubs draft strategy. I like it's outside of the box. He's got a great wide receiver core. Still got it, like Mike, you said, still got Aaron Rodgers. And then the guys that he drafted for running backs, those guys could be bumped up to running back 1 throughout the season. So I like it. I like J-Dubs as the winner.
So I've been looking through this.
Who's the who?
So remember, this is all with love. This is just working on improving strategy. But
With-
even worse
with
is the
hugs and
person I'm
kisses
picking.
and all that stuff.
The person I'm picking, I'm in a group chat with, so I know I'm going to get it even worse. While I love what she did early in the draft, I think things fell apart for Kelly and Phoenix towards the end of the draft.
Oh, you're going to get ripped in that.
I'm going to get destroyed in the group chat. I'm ready
chat,
for
man.
it. Cooper Kupp, Antonio Gibson, Darren Waller, all great. McLaurin as a wide receiver 2 fits right where he was. This is where everything starts to fall apart for me. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, even as an RB2, even in the 5th round, I'm just not there with it. There are rumors of Kareem Hunt back to Kansas City already. And obviously we're drafting early, but I have to give what I'm giving here. Adam Thielen, another year older, another year hurt. I just don't know. We saw KJ Osborne start to emerge there. And then this is one thing I wanted to talk about that I think Kelly might have fallen victim to. She didn't have a ton of depth here. She did great on catching the back end of the tight end run. But as we talked about the entire show, QB late, and she was the last round of QBs before it started to get into the very late guys. So we take Matthew Stafford off the board, who had a pretty decent fantasy season last year, but we also know Matt and Stafford can be also very hot and cold with Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott. And I don't want to ignore my own flaws here. I like my team. I would happily pick my team as the loser. I made a crucial mistake in that I thought when I was complaining about everybody sniping me for quarterback, I forgot I didn't have a quarterback. Zach Moss should have been Dak Prescott, and I would have had the best team. I don't care what anyone says, but we won't get into that. Huge mistake. I'm not happy with Kirk Cousins, but he'll do. The only thing I would talk about with looking at Kelly's draft is Myles Gaskin may not have a job. Rondale Moore, we don't know what he is, but could be a big step up. I know she's a Phoenix person, so she might have some inside information there. Henderson, again, another guy who could easily fall to 3rd on his own depth chart if Sony Michel resigns. So there's just a lot there that is a little bit more sketchy. We already kind of talked about Gus Edwards. And then most importantly, there was certainly no need to grab 2 tight ends in this league, and definitely not in the single-digit rounds. I like Pat Freiermuth, but you already got Darren Waller. No need for it. So let me be clear. At the end of the draft, I don't like Kelly's team, but fantasy football is all about what you do during the season. Pat Freiermuth is going to be great trade bait. She's going to be able to go get something from somebody, even in a 10-person league. She can certainly improve, and if she keeps joining us every week, she's going to get better, and that's the goal. So,
favorite picks out of all the teams. Favorite pick.
Ooh. Hilariously, I'm going to go right back to the team I just picked on and say Kelly grabbing Antonio Gibson at the 2-6, I think is a great pick.
Mike, what about you?
I love her pick of Waller in the 3rd. Like I said, I actually
all our favorite picks are Kelly, even though I say
it's you know, I mean, I really do. I think Waller is going to be. Wouldn't be surprised if he outproduces Andrews this year. I think it's going to be Kelsey, Waller, Andrews, especially with. And this is one thing we got to think about with Mark Andrews is a full year of Rashad Bateman. Marquise Brown is there too. I think they do want to kind of spread the wealth a little bit. So I don't think Mark Andrews is going to be that elite tight end one. He's still a top 3 guy for me. But I'm taking Waller over Kittle a million times out of 10.
Kelly said in the chat she has the worst team, but with the best picks.
Yeah,
no, right, Kelly. I'm so mad. I thought I was going to get Waller so late, and I was going to just flex on everybody, and you ruined it. So good job there.
The top of her draft is perfect, but you have to look at starting lineups. I don't know who her wide receiver 3 is because I don't like Thielen, and then you still have to find a flex there, and we're talking like Gus Edwards. It's not pretty. I'm sorry.
You know what my favorite pick would be in the draft if you didn't already take a quarterback beforehand, Evan, is Jalen Hurts. Yeah. It's silly. Like he was fantastic. And here's the thing: you want to look at a quarterback. Actually, this is probably
terrible in real life, but awesome in fantasy.
So in real life. But my thing with quarterbacks is this, or the thing with quarterbacks is look for the rushing upside. It's kind of why I broke from my strategy and went with Kyler Murray as high as I did. Yes, it was also because I took Hopkins the round before and I went for the stack, which is another type of strategy. But you want to look for quarterbacks with rushing upside. They are, even in games where they only pass for like maybe 200 yards, 250 yards, and don't have a lot of touchdowns, the rushing alone can add 4 to 5 points a week. It sounds insane, but it's actually the truth. Now, I used to work for Ball Blast Football, and I wrote an article for them once that basically I looked at the last 5 years of QB stats. 70% of those who hit 300 yards rushing were QB1s. So that right there alone just shows you look for the rushing upside. That is not to say to take, Jalen Hurts over Burrow if you think Burrow's better. But actually, it also is to say to take it because I'm pretty sure that Jalen Hurts had a higher points per game than Burrow last year. I do need to double check that, but it's a lot closer than you think. So again, it goes back to don't fall in love with the names and how good they are in an NFL field. Look for what matters in fantasy, and rushing upside matters. Another guy who could be a top 5 pick has only started 3 NFL games, and that's Trey Lance. He's somebody who, especially in Dynasty, I know the Dynasty community is all over him, but I think he is someone who's going to be a freaking steal in your home leagues, in your redraft leagues this year because of that rushing upside. Trey Lance could win leagues, and he's someone that the casual NFL fan wouldn't even typically think about right now.
And to just hit on that quickly before we get out of here, Lance and Justin Fields were guys that I almost took over Cousins, but I think Cousins has one more good year left in him. So
awesome. Well, Mike, thanks for dropping by for our very first episode of Mock It Like It's Hot. Of course, you can find us on Club FFL on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe and follow and smash the like button on all the social media platforms. We'll be back next week at 11 a.m. What we're going to do is every single week, it's a new format, new guest, new draft format. We're going to be doing all kinds of drafts throughout the year before the start of the actual fantasy football season. So make sure to check us out next week at 11 a.m. Make sure to check out No Pun Intended at 7 p.m. this Wednesday. It's the free agent recap. They also got a special guest with Kate
Majuk from Ball Blast.
Ball Blast will be on too as well. And also check out the newest article from Drew Metcalf on clubfantasyffl.com. He's doing the best values he sees in dynasty drafts right now. For myself, Ryan, Fantasy Mike, we will see you guys next week on Monday at 11 a.m. Peace.